Greetings and welcome. My name is Michael Miller, and this is a Michael Miller trademark training video out to you because you're watching. Thank you and welcome. I'm setting one timer for 38 and one timer for 40 minutes to make myself more aware of the time frame of 38 minutes and 40 minutes, to the point where I went right by around 40. Why? Because, as I've been telling you, one-on-one you can do Zoom free forever. It turns to 3 and it's 40 minutes. So here, I start the 38 minutes, and I go to my other timer and I start the 40 minutes, so that if I or you were on Zoom delivering whatever to a class, you'd have a warning within 2 minutes of when your bubble or your portal would stop, would collapse, would cease to be. So, I've been recommending that. My mat class is tonight. It's the third one out of 6. I can only hope it gets better than the one before it. But my attempt at what I'm trying to do will hopefully be clear and I'll not only accomplish what I'm hoping to for myself, but set an example of how others may structure their interactions as well. And then tomorrow at noon, Rocky Mountain time, I'm doing a making more money, keep making money, teaching Pilates over the internet. And that's my number 6. You can just show up and listen. It's $2. You have to verify your email address, and then it's $2. If you don't want to do those two things, I've got bills to pay and no way to pay them without making income. So, in the mat class tonight, and reflecting on what it was like to participate in a routine of a mat class, the same time, same day, over more than 10 years. As an instructor, I imagine students as well, went through different phases of things. And I would fall back on reminding you what Oliver used to say, if it's not going to be fun, why show up, right? And if that's the case, then let's the target be fun. You want to have fun. And if that's the case, then really I'm showing up as much a member of the audience to see what happens when I try to participate as the instructor. And that takes a lot of pressure off of my shoulders to do anything other than try to enjoy myself so that everybody else can as well. People in Rome are finding out that my mat class is at midnight 30, which, but if they came to it, And maybe later I'll be able to send a link where if they verify their email address and pay the $2, that they can look at the recording. See? And that's why I'm promoting, one of the reasons I am promoting this means of involvement. But yeah, I think you have to charge for that only what you're going to charge forevermore, because after the fact, I don't think you can go back and change it to something to sell or to change the price. One, two. New skills and old ways. New skills, old ways. In my Facebook feed down here, if this were Facebook, I know it's YouTube, but if I'm in Facebook, I would point down to where my feed is, because I shared a fellow instructor's video of moving around a kettlebell and a heavy stick, and it was more for the words about finding an opportunity to learn new skills, regardless of what they are. And I don't know that the kettlebell is for me, or the moving with the stick might be fascinating, but new skills, yes. And old ways, insofar as doing what's familiar in order to get out of what familiar has to give you. There you go. Doing what's familiar in order to get the most out of what familiar has to give you. And to the extent that you know and can do the mat, right? To the extent that you can dive into the flow of a mat, but like uniform eccentric loading, flowing through progressive patterns of movement. Whatever that is, that you're familiar with it, hopefully it resonates with Joe's original work, because there's an assumption that there is something to resonate with. My focus is on trying to deliver a mat class that people can follow in order to find the experience of complete coordination of body, mind, and spirit, in and out of, somewhere along the way, deeper of, whatever, in pursuing the mat, or at least uniform eccentric loading flowing through progressive patterns of movement, because that's the definition of Michael-Miller-Pilates, which is a theory that you can explain it for what it is. And the great thing about the explanation is it explains it as an experience, meaning that it's not intellectually something you're going to get in your mind and that's the whole picture and can never be. It's an experience that requires coordination of all of that thinking with all the stuff feeding information into the thinking, as well as the being that's carrying it all around. So, if you're not familiar with or don't know a Pilates mat, if you don't know the mat, if you don't know how to press yourself flowing from one exercise to the next, right? And if they have the same kind of structure and resonate with the mat that Joe wrote down in his book, Find that as a new way. Because even no matter what you know about Pilates, if you don't know how to do the mat, right, get lost in your effort to express the what you're after. Always keep your mind wholly concentrated on the purpose of the exercises as you perform them. This is vitally important in order for you to gain the results sought. Otherwise, there would be no valid reason for your interest in contrology. Without your mind wholly concentrated on the purpose of the exercises, without the coordination of your thinking and your observing. See, in Michael Miller Pilates, it's observing. And observing is what comes in sensationally through the parts of the brain that aren't the thinking parts. In MMP, its prefrontal cortex is one part of the brain, and the amygdala, hippocampal areas of the brain as being something other than all that thinking and the coordination of them in the pursuit of the choreography is doing Pilates. Let me go to number 3. I was so humbled by someone commenting that I was a pioneer in Pilates, of course, and I went to Google, and Google says a person who is among the first to explore or settle a new country or area, and then I would add to that, or subject, like Pilates, among the first. And certainly by the numbers now doing Pilates, I, among all of my contemporaries, that would be true of. People that are my age and were back then, exploring Pilates. Now, as far as I know, in my exploration, I'm the first to offer an explanation of the area or of the subject of Pilates. So that was my number 3 here. When it comes to Pilates, being a dancer or being rich are disadvantages to doing Pilates. For dancers, it's a disadvantage because they want to take their expression of dance into Pilates, thinking that Pilates has no distinguishing engagement of its own, which in MMP it does. Because, Joe writes, contrology develops the body uniformly, and to the extent that you're willing to acknowledge that and then recognize the biomechanics of core retention, and so much from what I see at a distance of dancers is their orientation in their body is to carry their shoulders in front of their hips. Sometimes, I know if you're really good, you don't do that, and all of that, right? I'm just pointing to a part of the spectrum. But the whole projection to the audience and the leaning into that takes you out of alignment in your body. I don't know how any dancers that have listened to me talk about core new tension can't have absorbed that into their imagination of how the body engages itself to move through space. And then rich, the presumption of the rich. Perhaps at some later time I can explain the disadvantages to those people that are affluent and Pilates doesn't matter to their income stream. That would be a good isotherm in terms of temperatures in bodies of water. When there's value in it, when you have a sense of the value of what you know, it allows you to make offers for what you'd be willing to share it for under a circumstance for a particular amount of time. Know how to make an offer. So that you get both work that is very profitable and so that you get work that isn't profitable but very rewarding. So my notes read, all those desperate to survive will do what it takes. Will learn what it takes to survive. And in the learning of what it takes, if you can rise above what is there all over in the culture, which I mean by tradition and folklore and lineages and a way of looking at Pilates that has no explanation, a way to rise above everybody else that lives within the context of knowledge based on word of mouth, handed down from generation to generation. That's folklore. And out of necessity has to ignore any explanation of what it is for what it is, because it undermines the whole structure of having it matter, or that having authority comes from lineages of folklore. And so my last then, you can hate the whole thing or not want to embrace any of what MMP stands for, because it points to Pilates having an essence of its own. But my recommendation to you is that you learn both about core new tension and Michael Miller Pilates, or you won't be able to defend yourselves from those who have learned about them. You can always say, oh yeah, I know about CT and MMP, but here's everything why I'm more special than what is universally true. And that'd be fine by me, and that's how I predict things to come. You know, the aristocracy will just have to admit the foundation upon which they presumed an authority that did not exist. Meaning that just from Joe's book, you can get to the experience and an understanding of the experience just by looking at the human body in three parts. The body, the thinking part of the brain, and the observing part of the brain. And those three things coordinating within MMP, as a state of being in the body in the moment of the doing, all in pursuit of the choreography, doing the mat work. I think I need to do a webinar that trains people on how to do the mat. So I agree with Jacqueline about learn new skills, do something, and do it in a way that, right, you develop a skill, that it's something that you can develop with, here you go, and be able to say that this is a skill you picked up in 2020 during the pandemic. Life can't live forever. Maybe I've been glib this whole time talking that way. But I've said a lot of what I wanted to say over the last 1,363 days. And it's all there for you to discover for yourself. Two experiences. The experience of core new tension, I call that a sensation. And the experience of contrology or Pilates, which is complete coordination of body, mind, and spirit as a state of being in the body in the moment of the doing. And that's what everyone is drawn to. See behind the curtain. Or maybe not behind the curtain, but just recognize what I think is obvious once it's pointed out. Connect the dots. Connect the dots. Because as individuals, as human beings, no matter how much we seek to avoid the synthesis of ourselves into our own simulation, it's up to you to choose how you assemble that. Connect the dots. Evaluate points of view. Evaluate points of view. Know the difference between folklore, which is word-of-mouth knowledge handed down from generation to generation, and theory, which is an explanation. And in this case, MMP is a theory to explain what Joe's method is. It's an experience. And everything else is derivative. Learn Zoom. Know how to add 2 and 2. Be able to conduct or participate in online on Zoom in any environment for any subject. That came after. Evaluate points of view. Direct your thinking. Direct it. Like set sail, head for a direction. Head in a direction. Geist.